Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I am Ramesh Ramachandran. Coming up in the next hour. Former UK Prime Minister David Cameron joins Sunak government as Foreign Secretary. James Cleverly replaces Suella Braverman as Home Secretary. Israel continues military operations in northern Gaza in self-defense. Tensions escalate at Israel's border with Lebanon. India's Commerce Minister participates in the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation and Indo-Pacific Economic Framework meetings in the US. Nepal decides to impose a ban on Chinese social media app TikTok. And the International Cricket Council inducts Virender Sehwag, Diana Edelji and Aravinda De Silva into Hall of Fame. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak sacked his Home Minister Suella Braverman on Monday after her criticism of the police's handling of a pro-Palestinian march divided his Conservative Party and threatened his own authority. James Cleverly succeeds Braverman as the Home Minister. In a surprise appointment, former British Prime Minister David Cameron was named the country's new Foreign Minister, and Steve Barclay gets the Environment portfolio. Absarul Hassan reports.
British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak sacked his Home Minister Suella Braverman after a series of controversies. James Cleverly was appointed Home Minister in place of Braverman.
It's been a huge privilege to serve as Foreign Secretary, and in that time I worked very closely with my colleagues in the Home Office, cracking down on illegal migration, reducing the number of small boat arrivals, and now as the Home Secretary I'm absolutely committed to stopping the boats as we promised, but also making sure that everybody in the UK feels safe and secure.
Former UK Prime Minister David Cameron succeeds Cleverly as Foreign Minister. Cameron's stunning political comeback comes 7 years after he has stepped down as Prime Minister. In a social media post, Cameron said, "The Prime Minister has asked me to serve as his Foreign Secretary and I have gladly accepted. We are facing a daunting set of international challenges, including the war in Ukraine and the crisis in the Middle East. At this time of profound global change, it has rarely been more important for this country to stand by our allies, strengthen our partnership and make sure our voice is heard." In another development, British Environment Minister Tressa Coffey resigned on Monday as Prime Minister Rishi Sunak reshuffled his top team of ministers. Braverman had last week defied Sunak by publishing a newspaper article attacking the police handling of march that took place on 11th November. Critics said her stance helped inflame tensions and encourage right-wing protesters to take the streets of London, putting Sunak under pressure to take action. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak had reappointed Braverman as Home Minister on 25th October 2022, less than a week after she resigned from the role for breaching government rules. Sayyid Absarul Hassan for DD India.
India's Minister for External Affairs, Subramaniam Jaishankar, met the newly appointed UK Foreign Secretary David Cameron on his first day in office. Jaishankar congratulated him on his appointment and held a detailed discussion on realizing the full potential of the India-UK strategic partnership. Both of them also exchanged views on the situation in West Asia, the Ukraine conflict and the Indo-Pacific. India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh held a telephonic conversation with UK Secretary of State for Defence Grant Shapps on Monday. Both ministers discussed a range of defence and security issues with particular emphasis on the Indo-Pacific. They briefly reviewed the ongoing engagements and discussed possible cooperation in new domains. Minister Shapps also invited the Indian Defence Minister to visit the UK in the near future. India's Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal is attending the APEC summit in the US city of San Francisco. India has been invited to the 30th APEC Economic Leaders Meeting as a guest economy. Minister Goyal is also attending the ministerial meeting of the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework in the city. During his 4-day visit to the US, Minister Goyal will interact with industry leaders, academics and US officials to further strengthen economic and commercial ties between the two countries. Minister Goyal will also hold bilateral meetings with US Commerce Minister Gina Raimondo, US Trade Representative Catherine Tai and ministers of other IPEF partner countries on the sidelines of the IPEF ministerial meeting. These meetings will focus on addressing trade barriers, promoting investment and greater cooperation in areas such as technology and innovation. Indonesia's President Joko Widodo is set to meet US President Joe Biden on Monday. The talks will aim to deepen the trade ties between the two countries. China and the situation in Gaza will likely feature prominently in their talks. William Denslow reports from New York City.
To a statement from the White House, Joe Biden and Joko Widodo's discussions will focus on deepening the partnership between the world's second and third largest democracies. The White House adds a little bit more information on what the two leaders will be discussing, including cooperation on clean energy transitions, advancing economic prosperity, and ensuring a free and open Indo-Pacific. Can also expect the issue of China to dominate much of the conversations, likely, according to analysts here from Indonesia's leader, calling for the US and China to cool tensions. This comes just a few days before President Joe Biden is expected to meet his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping in San Francisco in just a few days' time. Economics will likely feature very prominently in this bilateral meeting between the leaders of the US and Indonesia. Some analysts saying we might expect a limited free trade agreement. Much of the focus will be on market access to critical minerals, especially nickel, produced by Indonesia, that could play a pivotal role when it comes to easing US supply chain issues as it looks to ramp up the production of electric vehicles in the future. The issue of Gaza will likely also be in focus and will likely be discussed. Joko Widodo has described the humanitarian situation in Gaza as unacceptable. Joe Biden, the US president, has been pushing for more humanitarian pauses to see a more humanitarian access into the Palestinian enclave. But, of course, the United States has historically been a staunch ally of Israel. William Denslow in New York, reporting for DD India.
The US continues to face a risk of a government shutdown at the end of this week, despite a new compromise plan by Speaker Mike Johnson. Congressional Democrats indicated that they were open to Johnson's plan. Some House Republicans are in favor of a Tuesday vote, whereas some House Republicans are already pushing back the proposal for a two-step stopgap bill. The bill is intended to pressure the House and Senate to agree on spending bills for fiscal 2024 by the assigned dates. Meanwhile, U.S. Senator Tim Scott has suspended his run for the 2024 Republican presidential election nomination. Scott backed out just about 2 months before the start of voting in Iowa's leadoff caucuses. Scott is the second major candidate to leave the race since the end of October. Amid Israel's continued military operations in Gaza, ceasefire efforts have intensified in different fora. The European Union's foreign ministers gathered in Brussels on Monday to discuss the situation in Gaza. They condemned Hamas for using hospitals and civilians as a human shield and pressed for an immediate humanitarian pause. More in the next report.
Even after more than a month of the Israel-Hamas war, the major concern for the release of hostages and demand for a ceasefire continues. European Union foreign ministers gathered in Brussels on Monday to discuss Gaza and the situation in the Middle East, Ukraine, Armenia and Azerbaijan, as well as COP28.
We condemn the use of Hamas as hospitals and people as human shields, and on the other hand we ask Israel for maximum restraint and targeting in order to avoid human casualties.
The United Nations observed a minute's silence on Monday to honor more than 100 employees killed in Gaza. Since the Israel-Hamas war began last month, the United Nations flag was flown at half-mast. Attacks on health centers have been denied by both sides, but Israeli attacks in self-defense have intensified in several areas around Gaza Strip.
The European Union's foreign ministers are meeting in Brussels to discuss the situation in West Asia and their support for Ukraine. The focus will be on mitigating the humanitarian disaster in Gaza and figuring out ways to unlock the stalled EU funding for Ukraine. DD India's Alex Cadier reports from Brussels.
The European Union is trying to strike a difficult balance when it comes to violence in the Middle East. On the one hand, they stand by Israel's right to defend itself. On the other, they think Israel could do more to minimize civilian casualties in Gaza. Germany's Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock, recently back from the region, said she could feel how great the despair is in the Middle East, how much the people in Gaza are suffering, how much the people in the West Bank are suffering because they are mourning their loved ones, and how much the people in Israel are suffering as well. On Sunday, the EU's 27 member states condemned Hamas for using hospitals and civilians as human shields. They also urged Israel to show maximum restraint to protect civilians from its attack on Gaza, saying the EU is gravely concerned about the deepening humanitarian crisis in the Strip. The statement came as EU member states are increasingly shifting their position and putting more pressure on Israel to do more to avoid civilian casualties. French President Emmanuel Macron called for a ceasefire for the first time last week, while Belgium's Prime Minister called Israel's response disproportionate. Others, like Germany and Austria, remain reluctant to overtly criticize Israel. With all this focus on the Middle East, some EU officials are worried it could distract from the war on Europe's doorstep. Top EU diplomat Josep Borrell said the bloc should not forget about Ukraine. Lithuania's foreign minister said that losing focus could lead to a victory parade for Vladimir Putin. In short, the EU's foreign ministers have the daunting task of walking a diplomatic tightrope about the war in Gaza in the short term and planning an expensive long-term support for their Ukrainian neighbours. Alex Cadier in Brussels reporting for DD India.
The United States conducted airstrikes against two Iran-linked sites in eastern Syria in response to attacks against U.S. forces in Syria and Iraq. The response from U.S. forces marked the third time in recent weeks that they carried out strikes against facilities used by Iranian proxies. In a statement, U.S. Defense Minister Lloyd Austin said that the strikes targeted a training facility near the city of Al-Bukamal and a safe house near the city of Mayadeen. The U.S. military conducted airstrikes against a weapons storage facility and an ammunition storage area in Syria on 26 October and conducted subsequent airstrikes against a weapons storage facility on the 8th of November. Russia has claimed that multiple strikes were carried out on Ukrainian military targets, including ammunition and fuel depots, several artilleries and armored vehicles, as well as intercepting two HIMARS rockets and dozens of drones. On the other hand, Ukrainian forces launched several attacks on Russian troops as well as their military equipment and ammunition depots. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky warned his compatriots against renewed Russian attacks on infrastructure as winter approaches. A Russian Pacific Fleet squadron is visiting the Shutdown port of Bangladesh for the first time in 50 years. The Embassy of Russia in Bangladesh said on X that it is a huge milestone for Russia-Bangladesh relations. The last time Russian or Soviet naval ships visited Bangladesh was 50 years ago. Russian state news agency TASS says that the Pacific Fleet Squadron comprises the large anti-submarine warfare ships Admiral Tributs and Admiral Panteleyev and the oceanic tanker Pechenga. South Korea and the United States revised a bilateral security agreement. South Korea's Defense Minister Shin Bok-sik and his U.S. counterpart Lloyd Austin signed the updated agreement at the security talks in Seoul. the tailored deterrence strategy aimed at countering North Korea's nuclear weapons and other arms. The revision was considered necessary as the existing strategy is not addressing rapid advancements in North Korea's missile programs. DD India's Patrick Falk reports from Singapore.
Well, the US and South Korea are in the middle of talks in Seoul on the North Korean threat, and one of the things that the two sides have done is to upgrade the so-called tailored deterrence strategy, which is aimed at countering North Korea's nuclear weapons and other arms. It has been in place for 10 years now, but the two countries felt that it didn't adequately respond to the rapid developments that Pyongyang has been making with its nuclear and ballistic missiles program. So the idea now is to expand on that. What that means isn't clear, but the current strategy entails the deployment of strategic assets, including US nuclear forces. And US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin noted that recently it had deployed ballistic missile submarines as well as a B-52 to South Korea, and he also suggested that the tempo of those deployments could continue despite other major global crises taking place right now. It also comes after the Atlantic Council think tank recently issued a study warning that the advancements that both North Korea and China were making in their weapons capabilities meant that there was a dramatic increase in the risk that the US and South Korea's deterrent strategies could fail in the next decade.
And staying in the region, North Korea called for the United Nations Command to be dissolved, calling it an illegal war organization over a meeting which is scheduled to take place between the member states of the United Nations Command in South Korea later this week. The US-led United Nations Command is a multinational military force. It oversees affairs in the heavily fortified demilitarized zone between the two Koreas, which remain technically at war. Still to come on DD India News Hour. President Ranil Wickremesinghe of Sri Lanka presents the country's general budget for 2024. The Indian Air Force displays its Made in India prowess at Dubai Air Show. And Nepal decides to ban the Chinese social media video app Tik Tok.
Where information shapes our reality, one app stands out, helps you stay ahead of time. Introducing the DD India app, your gateway to a world of news right at your fingertips. Your most trusted source of news goes global, goes digital. Explore a world of options, top stories, live updates, in-depth analysis, and more. Stay informed wherever you are. Real-time alerts keep you ahead of the curve always. The DD India app, connecting you to the world one story at a time. Download now and explore the world of knowledge, insights, and authentic information.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. Sri Lanka's President Ranil Wickremesinghe on Monday presented the country's budget for 2024. Wickremesinghe noted that the situation in the country has improved over the past year. He called for tough reforms until the country's economy recovers fully. Ahmed Muin Faruqi reports from Colombo.
One eye on next year's elections and the other on IMF's financial package, Sri Lanka President Ranil Wickremesinghe presented the budget for 2024 in the Parliament on Monday. Presenting the budget, President Wickremesinghe, who is also the Finance Minister, admitted that although the country's situation has improved, it has not recovered completely.
Our country's situation is now better than it was before 1 year. I am not saying that the economy has completely recovered. It has become comparatively better. We have attained that position by facing difficulties, making sacrifices, and enduring various hardships.
Sri Lankan president announced a smaller than expected expansion in its budget for 2024, while projecting a significant jump in revenues crucial to keep its bailout program from the International Monetary Fund afloat. The budget aims for a 47.1% tax revenue increase to Rs 3.82 trillion. Wickramasinghe also hinted that revenue from income tax would see a 25% boost to Rs 1.08 trillion. Taxes on goods and services rise by 62.4% to Rs 2.235 trillion. In addition, the public sector employees, who number 1.5 million, would get increased cost of living allowance, apart from other popular benefits given as pension and senior citizens allowance. 1.5 billion rupees will be allocated from this budget for development of school cricket and for providing necessary facilities for cricket players at the provincial level. 2 billion Sri Lankan rupees will be allocated for basic activities of Hingurugoda International Airport. Besides, 50 billion Sri Lankan rupees have been allocated to assist small and medium enterprises. The president also announced the establishment of 4 new universities. Recounting the economic crisis experienced by the island nation last year, Wickramasinghe mentioned the assistance of India.
We strive to rescue the country from the hellish situation it was facing. Government employees showed dedication and hard work to salvage the nation. Our friends helped us out.
Following economic crisis in Sri Lanka, International Monetary Fund approved a $2.9 billion bailout for Sri Lanka. The country tumbled into its worst financial crisis in more than 7 decades last year. Soaring prices, shortages of essential goods and crippling international debt sparked nationwide protest. Ahmad Moin Farouqi's report from Colombo, Sri Lanka.
The government of Nepal has decided to ban the Chinese short-form video app called Tik Tok. The decision was taken at a cabinet meeting held on Monday, in which the app's adverse impact on social harmony and its tendency of encouraging hate speech in society was discussed. The specific date for implementing the ban is yet to be determined. The app has already been banned in some countries. India, for instance, banned it in the year 2020. More people have been forced to flee to neighboring Chad as fighting rages on in Darfur. The United Nations says at least 800 people were killed in recent attacks held by the Rapid Support Forces militia in a bid to control West Darfur state. The escalating violence is a warning of an extended tribal conflict in the region. DD India's Naba Mohieddin reports from Sudan.
In a new threat to the unity of Sudan and a real warning of a looming civil war in Darfur region, the RSF militia is now accused of ethnically driven killings in western Darfur, Al Jinain city, in many towns, Adramata town, specifically when they tried to control that city on November 4th and November 5th. According to the United Nations, there is at least 800 people were killed, mainly from boys and men from non-Arab tribes, and there is 300 men and boys are missing right now. The RSF denied the accusations, but many resources on the ground from many tribes confirmed that a massacre took place in Al Jinaina, and there is expected violence and from the two sides. The situation looks like 2003 civil war in Darfur when Arab tribes and backed by RSF and the government at that time attacked non-Arab tribes. So the situation is really risky, and the humanitarian situation is very dire. People are trying to flee from the violence and war zone area to neighboring countries like Chad. There is a lot of warning by the United Nations and many international organizations that urgent intervention needed to prevent civil war and genocides and war crimes, because it's apparently that RSF right now are trying to control vast areas of Darfur. Maybe it will be one of the strategic points or cards in the ongoing Jeddah talks to negotiate the power in Khartoum and in Darfur region. Naba Mohieddin reporting for DD India from Sudan.
The Dubai Air Show has begun. The 5-day event aims to drive collaboration, technological advancement and sustainable innovation. This edition, themed The Future of the Aerospace Industry, promises to redefine the trajectory of the aerospace, space and defense sectors, hosting over 1,400 exhibitors from 95 countries.
The 18th edition of the Dubai Air Show has begun at the Dubai World Centre in the UAE. Themed The Future of the Aerospace Industry, this edition promises to redefine the trajectory of aerospace, space and defence sectors, hosting over 1,400 exhibitors from 95 countries. The growing prowess of Indian aerospace industry is creating buzz worldwide. The India Pavilion at the Dubai Air Show is a testament to that, as top Indian defence companies, including Bharat Electronics, Bharat Dynamics Limited and Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, have unveiled the nation's latest advancements in the sector there. The model display of the twin-engine deck-based fighter developed by the Defence Research and Development Organisation, or DRDO, remains one of the main attractions at the India Pavilion. The India Pavilion at the Dubai Air Show stands as a demonstration of the nation's commitment to pushing the boundaries of aerospace technology, fostering innovation and securing its position as a global leader in defence advancements. An Indian Air Force contingent is also participating in the Dubai Air Show. The IAF contingent comprises of the light combat aircraft Tejas and the advanced light helicopter Dhruv.
As an Indian, as an Air Force officer, I feel extremely proud that we have decided to take part in this world-famous Dubai Air Show, connecting with people, showcasing our capability and our ability to match up to the aspirations.
Tejas aircraft is one of the best aircraft in its class, and it's very small. The aircraft is capable of climbing up to 50,000 feet, and the max speed it can touch is 1.6 Mach.
The Sarang helicopter display team's performance comprises showcasing their formation aerobatic skills, while both static and aerial displays are part of Tejas' engagement audience at the Dubai Air Show. Participation also serves as a platform to highlight India's progress in aviation, featuring indigenous-made aircraft like the Tejas and Dhruv. Vinod Kumar's report from Dubai for DD India.
And take a look at some other stories making news in India. The Income Tax Department on Monday carried out raids at 15 locations in Hyderabad, the capital of the state of Telangana. The raids were conducted at the residences and offices of the chairperson, CEO and directors of a pharma company. At least 9 people were killed in a fire that broke out in an apartment complex in the southern Indian city of Hyderabad. The fire broke out due to an explosion in a godown holding oil and chemicals stored in drums. Indian Minister G. Kishan Reddy visited the apartment complex to take stock of the situation. Indian Navy Chief Admiral R. Harikumar visited the forward deployed Marcos and BSF troops. Acknowledging their presence and sustained operations in vital locations, he appreciated their commitment and professionalism. He also greeted them on the festive occasion of Diwali. A thick layer of smog engulfed India's capital, New Delhi, after people burst firecrackers on Diwali night, leading to heavy pollution across the city. Visibility was reduced to a few meters. The city's air quality is in the poor category, with the air quality index at 248 on Monday. Still to come on DD India News Hour. India's capital, New Delhi, to host an international trade fair from 14th to 27th November. And efforts are on to rescue 40 workers trapped in an under-construction tunnel in India.
Welcome to Jaipur.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. A quick recap of the headlines. Former UK Prime Minister David Cameron joins Sunak government as Foreign Minister. James Cleverly replaces Suella Braverman as Home Minister. India's Commerce Minister takes part in the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation and Indo-Pacific Economic Framework meetings in the US. And Nepal decides to impose a ban on Chinese social media app TikTok. And going back to the top story, the UK cabinet reshuffle. My colleague Oli Bar joins us from London. Oli, what's been the reaction to the reshuffle, and do Sunak and his Conservative Party emerge politically stronger from it?
He will certainly hope so, Ramesh, and allies of Rishi Sunak and allies of David Cameron will tell you that this is an improved front bench for Rishi Sunak that can go into the next election fighting for the centre ground of British politics. They will tell you that David Cameron has all the experience that you need as a former Prime Minister to be an effective Foreign Secretary at a time of huge international turmoil, be it in the Middle East at the moment, or be it with regards to the conflict in Ukraine and other areas of difficulty in geopolitics elsewhere around the globe. Now, critics of Rishi Sunak, even within his own Conservative Party, will say that they worry that the right wing of the party is not being represented enough. There are other Conservatives who worry that David Cameron's record on foreign policy wasn't particularly strong, they will tell you, when he was Prime Minister. They worry about his stance on China, for example. The opposition parties are calling it laughable, is one of the ways that the cabinet reshuffle has been described, and they will point you towards recent words of Rishi Sunak when he said at his party's conference just a couple of weeks ago that he and his government were going to be agents of change heading into the next election, and the opposition parties will point to a former Prime Minister coming back into government and say you can't be agents of change if you are reappointing a figure like that to your Downing Street administration. So it very much depends on who you ask. But as I say, Rishi Sunak will believe and hope that he has a stronger team heading into the upcoming general election, which has to be held at some point over the next year or so. So he's really tooling up for an election campaign as and when one gets, once the firing gun is finally fired for that election campaign to take place. Of course, we don't yet have a date for it, but we know it's coming soon.
Oli, I'm sure many people watching this broadcast would be wondering, what do you read into Sunak naming David Cameron as a foreign minister? Is it usual for a British Prime Minister to return to government as a cabinet minister?
It's not unprecedented, but it's very, very rare indeed. I think it's fair to say that David Cameron is one of those former prime ministers who hasn't really found his calling after leaving Downing Street, and therefore this return to frontline politics, you can see why it suits him. You can see why it appeals to him. One of the other criticisms that is levelled at Rishi Sunak's appointment of David Cameron by the opposition parties, for example, is that they say if you're having to bring back a former prime minister into enter a role like this, then does it suggest that you don't have enough talent within the ranks of MPs, of parliamentarians who are actually in your party at the moment, that you're having to look elsewhere to fill a role like this? But clearly part of it is also, as I was saying, trying to aim for the centre ground of British politics heading into a next election. David Cameron very much seen as from the moderate centre wing of the Conservative Party, and that clearly is part of the calculation that Rishi Sunak is making here as well.
Oli, thank you. That was Oli Bar reporting from London. And staying on this story, Professor Harsha Pant now joins us from the New Delhi suburb of Greater Noida. Professor Pant is Vice President Studies and Foreign Policy at the Observer Research Foundation. The ORF is a privately held think tank headquartered in New Delhi. Professor Pant, welcome to DD India News Hour. Now, it seems David Cameron is in the news. I mean, everybody, all eyes are on Cameron. But I want to start with the Home Minister who has been sacked, Suella Braverman. Now, Braverman's article accused the UK police of double standards at protests, suggesting that they were tough on right-wing demonstrators but easy on pro-Palestinian marchers. Now, it raised tensions as the UK witnessed pro-Palestinian demonstrations and counter-protests last week. Did Suella Braverman become a liability of sorts for Sunak? And more importantly, having sacked her, did Sunak just make Braverman the poster girl of sorts for the Conservative Party's right wing?
I think yes. I think on both counts, both the issues that you have raised, I would say yes. Suella Braverman had been, for a very long time, one of the most vocal members of the right wing of the Conservative Party, and her you would recall that she was. She had to leave her office once before as well. And this is the second time that she had been asked to leave. She had to resign from the cabinet. And therefore, there is something about her personality and her politics that seems to be not at ease with where the Conservative Party wants to be, and therefore her pronouncements often lead her and the party into trouble. And that's what we have seen in this particular case, that I think this was more about the way she ignored what 10 Downing Street, what Rishi Sunak was asking her to do, basically to tone down the article and to tone down the argument, which she refused to do. And she went ahead and published the article exactly the way what she wanted to frame it. And so I think there was no way she could have continued when things came out and it was clear that she had defied the Prime Minister's office. So in that sense, I think this is about Rishi Sunak trying to reestablish his authority over the cabinet, over the government, where you could not have a leader that who is being defied by his cabinet members the way Braverman did. But perhaps this also tells you the discomfort or the tension within the Conservative Party on this issue, whether it is the issue of immigration, on which Braverman had some very strong views, and or on this issue of Israel, pro-Israeli supporters and pro-Palestinian supporters, and the way Metropolitan Police had dealt with it, with the problem. And I think she, what she did, she basically was reaching out to her own constituency. She was making an argument for her constituency, and Rishi Sunak found it perhaps incompatible with where he wanted to take the party before elections, and therefore her sacking and bringing in David Cameron perhaps reflect two sides of the same coin in terms of how he wants to position the Conservative Party, and therefore Braverman was becoming a liability, and therefore she had to go. But I think it also tells you that Braverman will continue to be one of the most significant voices on the right wing of the Conservative Party. And she has said that she has things to say, which she will say later on, which I think tells you that it will be difficult for Rishi Sunak to ignore her, or the Conservatives to ignore her, as they move into the into the phase of electioneering very soon.
Indeed. Professor Pant, let me now come to the man of the moment, David Cameron. How do you view Cameron's appointment as the foreign minister?
Well, it's a very interesting appointment, and one has to acknowledge the role David Cameron had played in making Conservatives, the Tories, winnable. You would recall when he had come to office and when he had won the mandate. He had won the mandate after the Labour Party under Tony Blair and then Gordon Brown, had come to the center of British politics, and the Conservatives were seen as the right wing of the on the political spectrum and not really electable. And so what David Cameron did was he brought the Conservatives to the to power by making them almost for a very long time now almost unbeatable. And in fact, the way he would not have gone but for Brexit and his confidence in himself to make the argument against Britain leaving, against Britain parting ways from the EU. So he was very confident that Tories and he in particular would win that argument, and therefore there would be no need for him to leave, and therefore he constructed the whole referendum argument and created that moment in British politics. And I think that was, in fact, the end of his political term, and one thought that this would be end of his politics. But clearly, he's a very competent man. He made what modern Tory party looks like, and therefore, for Rishi Sunak to repose faith in him makes sense in some ways. But I think it also opens a line of attack against Rishi Sunak, that whether he's taking the Tory party back or whether he is taking the party forward. And I think that's the problem that he'll have to deal with.
Professor Pant, I want us to dwell a bit more, if you will, on Cameron, the man and his politics. I ask you this because my colleague Oli Bar in London says that people are still wondering what his policies would be, say, for example, vis-a-vis China. So there are a lot of questions being asked of Cameron as the new foreign minister. How will Cameron's joining the Sunak government be received by the Conservative Party's rank and file? Now, one report says that it would be welcomed by more centrist lawmakers, but hated by some on the right of the party. Another report says that it might revive the Brexit debate. Now, Cameron had triggered the UK's decision to leave the European Union when he held a referendum, as you mentioned, in the year 2016, even though he himself backed staying in the EU.
Yes, he's a smart man. He's a smart politician, but and I think the problem he had was that he misread the mood of the British public on Brexit, and therefore he had greater confidence, perhaps, in his own ability than the political undercurrents or the understanding of those political undercurrents. But I think it's fair to say that he has been a reformer of the Conservative Party. He has been a modernizer of the Conservative Party. He made he brought in issues around LGBTQ communities, around climate change, where the Tories were lagging behind the Labour Party, and he brought those issues and modernized the Labour Party where it reflected the aspirations of contemporary British politics. And I think that's what led the uninterrupted rule of the Tories since he took over. But I think the questions around his politics, it seems to me, one can certainly make an argument that, look, his appointment will certainly gladden the hearts of the centrists, but will enrage the right wing of the Conservative Party. And the right wing is now the dominant strain in the Conservative Party. So therefore, I think the contestation is going to be interesting. And it is also going to be interesting as to how Rishi Sunak wants to lead the Conservatives in the next elections and where he's pitching for the Conservatives. As I said, it's very clear from Sunak's point by the sacking of Braverman and bringing in Cameron that he wants to appeal to the centre ground of British politics, which is sensible. That's the only way you can win elections in British politics, and that's I think one of the reasons why as the Conservatives seem to be more seemingly more right wing than perhaps the British politics allows. Rishi Sunak is now starting to rethink the combination of actors and the players that he would need to take the Tories to the elections next year. But I think what is also interesting in some ways is that on foreign policy also, if you observe David Cameron's graph, there are certainly questions about China that will rise. But on China also, we had seen the move away from China under Cameron gradually, although he was a very pro-China figure to begin with. And also on India, if I may, he was the first prime minister who openly articulated the need for building strong ties with India and openly challenged Pakistan against terrorism during his visit to India, under when he was the prime minister. So certainly, I think there are, in more ways than one, India has dealt with him, and he has been one of the he has been one of the prime ministers that actually shaped the emerging and the upward trajectory that we have seen in the last few years develop between India and the UK.
Professor Pant, I would have loved to continue this fascinating conversation with you, but I'm afraid I'm run out of time. I will have to leave it at that. May I thank you once again for joining us and sharing your thoughts and insights with our viewers at home and abroad. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. And moving on, India's capital, New Delhi, will host an international trade fair from the 14th to 27th November. More than 1 million people are expected to visit the mega event. DD India's Debyendu Mondal reports.
After the successful completion of the G20 summit in September this year, Delhi is once again gearing up to host another mega event at the newly redeveloped Pragati Maidan complex. This time, Delhi is all set to host the biggest ever 42nd edition of the India International Trade Fair. The theme, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, United by Trade. Countries from across the world will gather at the national capital to participate at this mega international event. Women entrepreneurs from the SAARC countries will be a key focus of this year's trade fair. SAARC countries like Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, Maldives, Nepal and Bhutan will also set up pavilions to showcase their best products and businesses to the world. Other countries like Turkey, Qatar, Bahrain will also be major participants at the International Trade Fair. The mega event is scheduled to be held between the 14th and the 27th of November this year. More than 1 million people are expected to visit this international trade fair this year. Spread over 1 lakh square meters, the 14 halls of the Swanky Pragati Maidan complex will showcase businesses and innovations from across the world. At home, states like Bihar, Jharkhand and Kerala will be the partner states for this edition of the International Trade Fair, while states like Uttar Pradesh, Delhi, Jammu and Kashmir and Maharashtra will be the focus states. Not only this, visitors and participants will also have an experience of cuisines from across 30 states of India at the mega open food zone at the trade fair. This mega 13-day event in the national capital has already started creating a buzz amongst the business communities from across the world. And the event will further enhance India's image at the world stage. Debyendu Mondal's report for DD India.
In the northern Indian state of Uttarakhand, rescue work is on at full swing to evacuate 40 trapped workers from an underground under-construction tunnel in Uttarkashi district. A 150-meter portion of a 4.5-kilometer-long proposed tunnel to link Silkyara and Dandalgaon on the Brahma Khal Yamunotri highway in Uttarkashi collapsed around 4 in the morning local time on Sunday. Officials supervising the rescue operation said that all the trapped workers are safe. The rescue teams have established contact with them using wireless sets. Oxygen is being pumped into the tunnel to ensure that the workers have air supply. One of Australia's largest port operators, DP World, has said that it had resumed work at all its facilities after a cybersecurity incident forced it to suspend operations for 3 days. The breach had crippled operations at the company, which manages about 40% of the goods that flow in and out of Australia, affecting its container terminals in Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane and Western Australia's Fremantle. DP World expects to move about 5,000 containers from the 4 Australian terminals throughout the day, although ongoing investigations and responses to protect its networks could result in temporary disruptions over the next few days.
This afternoon, DP World announced that they are resuming operations at their facilities. Their expectation is that 5,000 containers will leave their ports today. Speaker, the incident at DP World is the latest in a string of cyber attacks which have shaken our country.
And now take a look at some more stories making news around the world. The Indian Ocean island of Madagascar heads to the polls on Thursday for the first round of a presidential election that's expected to be tense after weeks of opposition protests. President Andry Rajoelina, in power since 2019, after an earlier stint as head of state following a 2009 coup, is seeking a third term. Streets in Western Ireland's coastal region of Galway flooded on Monday as Storm Debbie gushed in from the Atlantic, submerging parked vehicles and streets alike. Debbie is expected to move east across Ireland and towards England later on Monday, as alerts were issued for strong winds in the northwestern county of Lancashire. Barcelona's Sagrada Familia Temple illuminated the four towers of the Evangelists for the first time as hundreds watched the iconic moment at Antoni Gaudi's masterpiece. The four towers are crowned with the four winged figures of the Tetramorph by Spanish sculptor Javier Medina. Work on Gaudi's Sagrada Familia began in the year 1882. Indy Gregory, a critically ill 8-month-old baby girl from Britain who was taken off life support over the weekend following a legal battle, has died overnight. She suffered from a rare, incurable and degenerative mitochondrial disease. Gregory's parents lost the legal fight last month to keep her on life support machines. And still to come on DD India News Hour. Tennis star Novak Djokovic secures year-end top ranking for a record-extending 8th time. And cricketers Virender Sehwag, Diana Edulji and Aravinda De Silva inducted into Hall of Fame. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. And now to news from the world of sport. The International Cricket Council has named 3 cricketers to its Hall of Fame: legendary Indian opening batter Virender Sehwag, Diana Edulji, a trailblazer of Indian women's cricket, and Sri Lankan superstar Aravinda De Silva. The 3 legends will be honoured during the ICC Men's Cricket World Cup semi-final between India and New Zealand at the Wankhede Stadium in Mumbai.
The National Cricket Council on Monday announced the cricketers inducted into the ICC Hall of Fame as the class of 2023. Former ICC ODI World Cup winners Aravinda De Silva and Virender Sehwag have been inducted as part of class of 2023, along with pioneering Indian women's cricketer Diana Edulji. De Silva, Edulji and Sehwag will join as inductees number 110, 111 and 112. De Silva enjoyed a 19-year international career for Sri Lanka, notably playing a starring role in their memorable run to victory at the ICC Cricket Men's World Cup in 1996. Upon his induction, De Silva said, "This achievement is a tribute to the dedication, sacrifice and love that have shaped my cricketing journey. My family, my parents, my sister, my wife and children are my anchor and deserve the deepest thanks for their unwavering support and sacrifice which have propelled me towards success." Edulji becomes the first Indian female inducted into the ICC Hall of Fame. She had a 17-year-old long international playing career and played pioneering role in establishing the most successful domestic team in Indian women's cricket history. Idulji said, "It indeed is a great honour to be the first Indian women's cricketer to be inducted and join a galaxy of cricketers, male and female, from across the world. I am delighted to be considered for this award. It is not only a proud moment for me, my family and friends, but also for BCCI and Indian women's cricket team." Sehwag was also a pivotal figure in the World Cup winning campaign for India back in the year 2011, and his record-breaking career spanned for 14 years and over 17,000 runs in international cricket. Sehwag said, "I would like to thank the ICC and the jury for inducting me with this honour. I feel extremely grateful for having spent a great part of my life doing what I loved most, hitting the cricket ball." Sehwag scored a total 23 Test centuries during his illustrious career, the fifth most by an India men's player, with his highest score of 319 against South Africa in Chennai in 2008, the best of any Indian player ever. Sehwag totalled 8,273 runs for India in 50-over cricket, and his 219 against the West Indies in Indore in 2011 remains the third highest score achieved by any men's player at ODI level. Sports Desk, DD India.
Tennis ace Novak Djokovic secures year-end top ranking for a record-extending 8th time as he beat Holger Rune at the ATP Finals. Djokovic tamed Danish debutant Holger Rune with a 7-6, 6-7, 6-3 win in his opening round-robin match at the ATP Finals to seal the year-end #1 ranking. Djokovic will next face Jannik Sinner on Tuesday. The Serbian's 19th successive win ended any chance of Spain's Carlos Alcaraz overtaking him in the rankings this week.
Yeah, it's huge. It means a lot. Obviously, I knew that coming into the tournament here, I needed only one win to clinch the year-end #1, and I really wanted that to happen already tonight. I didn't want to prolong, in a way, the situation and complicate, in a way, this particular goal. So I'm really glad that I managed to do that tonight.
And that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram. You can also check out our website ddindia.co.in. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I am Ramesh Ramachandran. From all of us here in New Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.